We have our semi-finalists. England will take on France in just a few days' time now in Bristol. However, they started off in Bristol, their kind of campaign there, by beating Scotland pretty comprehensively.
Yeah, it's the semi-final first and foremost is quite an exciting thing, with England having gone to France in the pre-World Cup warm-up and hammered them. So I watched an interview with Mo Hunt that came out, again, shouting out the Women's Rugby Show, Sam, by the way, the brilliant work he does, where Mo Hunt said, we are so aware of what a different proposition that's going to be, where they've got Bordeaux Sons who's coming back in, where they're bringing on their first team and they've got all this momentum that they've built up and so on. That's really exciting because the game that we've just seen against Scotland on Sunday was very much the same as every other Red Roses game we've seen for basically the last 5 years.
I don't want to. It's a bad note to start on, right? Yeah. I think that's the weakest game in the tournament so far. I think this has been a brilliant tournament. I think that's the first game I was like, I am not enjoying this as I was watching it. It was a procession fairly early on, right? So Scotland got some momentum early on. They had a really good first sort of 4 or 5 minutes, and then they made the decision to take 3 points, and that felt very much like the sort of what we talk about Australia, like damage limitation, right?
Yes.
And actually, they were never going to beat them by scoring 3-pointers. They
were
were going to win
an
it by being
unconfident decision.
Yeah.
And Rachel Malcolm's usually such a bold captain that felt a bit, like a bit of an admittance of defeat to me.
That was it, and it kind of felt like almost the game felt in a way like it ended there.
Yeah.
Do you know what the most points Scotland have ever scored against England is?
What?
In the women's
How many?
game? 13.
Wow.
So Scotland had beaten England once, which was 8-3 some years ago, sort of early noughties, I think. But they've never scored more than 13 points against England. I checked that just before the game. And so when England got to 14-3 after sort of 10 minutes, it kind of felt like that was that.
Yeah.
Like
you need
Scotland
a miracle
had
already.
one chance where they didn't take it. They had one chance slightly afterwards where they then like really didn't, instead of taking 3, they just kind of like knocked the ball and lost it. And that was it, right? And then England go down the other end and score almost immediately. And it kind of felt like after about 10, 15 minutes that the game was done. Or maybe slightly more, maybe up to 15, 20 minutes. Yeah. But you kind of hit this point very early on where it didn't feel competitive. And unlike a game like Samoa or even Australia, where there were other conditions by which those teams could win, or the USA gave them a game for longer, it felt like the Scotland performance kind of just petered out a little bit.
Yeah.
And they kept giving the role in defence, but that was kind of all they were able to contribute. And there wasn't a way in the knockout game that you can kind of go like, no, we've really stood up and, without it being like South Africa against New Zealand, where it's like the first time we've ever made it this far and, oh, amazing, we're doing this. And I know, like, knockouts for Scottish rugby teams are rare.
Yeah.
Especially over the last, decade or so.
It was their first women's knockout game in 20 plus years, which is pretty huge. I think 24 years it was since the last one.
The men have made one, since 2007.
Yeah.
So, like, for Scottish rugby fans, like, this is a rare event, right?
100%.
And so I think there is something quite disappointing in the way that there wasn't that like, no, we're going to throw everything at this. We're going to like.
It was a bit anticlimactic, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Because this is a Scotland team that really deserved to be where they are, and there's so much narrative surrounding it with Jade Konkel-Roberts sadly retiring for really horrible reasons.
Yeah. So she was pretty upfront, right? She came out and huge credit to Scotland players, right? Immediately, the moment the game was done, the moment the campaign was over, the moment they were knocked out, about like 7 or 8 Scotland players have now spoken publicly against the SRU.
Yeah.
Which is like the other story of this game. And Jade Konkel-Roberts, the most damning and telling of them all, which was she announced her retirement last week and is one of the modern greats, right? Was, you think about like the first time we covered Scotland women on Squid Rugby was their draw with France back in 2020.
Yeah. What a game that was.
What a game that was, and what a performance Jade Konkel put in. Like was one of the.
She was kind of one of the players that drew me to this Scotland team.
She was the first professional, first woman to sign a professional rugby contract in Scotland. She was their star player at the start of professionalisation.
One of the few players in international rugby to have started a test in the front row, the second row, and the back row.
Yeah.
Which is crazy.
Yeah. And beyond that, also a rare player who improved by becoming a vegan.
Yes,
and kind of like changed her body shape, became more quick and dynamic by gaining vegan powers, Scott Pilgrim style.
Hell yeah.
So big into that.
A vegan firefighter, second row, back row.
Honestly,
who can play
like,
prop,
one of the modern greats.
How cool.
And a bit of a shame, obviously Evie Gallagher's form meant she hasn't got as many minutes this World Cup as perhaps we would have liked, but got to have like a really very, very decent performance in obviously like quite trying circumstances, in horrible conditions and against the best team in the world.
Yeah.
But I'm so glad she got a moment. She got a moment of recognition there.
Yeah, a sentimental start at the end of the campaign.
Yeah.
So yeah, there was her retirement was one thing. As you say, there's a lot in terms of the.
Sorry, I didn't actually mention the. Sorry, I didn't mention the situation. So sorry. So she wasn't offered a contract by the SRU.
Yeah.
She was told this in a 6-minute phone call,
which is stupid.
Yeah.
And you imagine there are a lot of people who have stories like that. Some of them are starting to come out now. As I say, Rachel Malcolm spoke very calmly and earnestly in her post-match interview.
She always does.
Yes. And like, she so easily could have lashed out.
Yeah.
And she instead kept her cool, and she is really led by example off the pitch as well as on it. I'm so impressed with her. Bryan Eason's last game as Scotland head coach, who I seem to think is quite a popular figure. I know that there are divided opinions on how far he can take Scotland, which I think is entirely fair, and it seems like the end of the road has come from at the right time. I think that this squad is ready for a fresh start, as much as he's also done a brilliant job.
It very much feels like it depends who they get in.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I feel like it is the moment to find the right guy to lead them to the next stage.
Yeah.
I feel like Eason's kind of like led them as far as he can, but there's a worry of do they bring in someone who is not the right person and will actually do a worse job than Easson was doing of hitting them at a consistent standard.
It's undoubted that he seems like a good bloke and a great coach, though.
Absolutely.
So with that in mind,
popular with the squad.
100% can only wish him well. So anyway, point being, there was a lot riding on this, and Scotland really have built up from the ground up and deserved their quarter-final. And then we got this game, and I kind of try and meditate my cynicism around this, because I don't know, I don't want to be negative, because I love rugby so much and I love everything in rugby, and you're very much the same.
Yes.
That we have these personas that we've built up as massive lovers of rugby, right?
It's true.
And there's just this feeling I get when
I reject that it's a persona, but I get what you're saying.
Yeah, but you know what I mean. It's what people have.
Yeah.
People know us as, right?
Yeah.
It's not a persona at all, but you know what I mean. But then we get to this point where we watch the same Red Roses game for the 900th time.
It does feel like watching the same game repeatedly.
It does.
And as I said, there's something added by the Samoa game, right? Where you're like, oh, them getting any points is a win. And then keeping it under 100 is a win, right?
Yeah.
And Australia literally had a points target. They had to keep it under to win. So that added a little bit of drama in there. And they managed to lead against them for quite a while. It was like, well, how long can they keep this up?
Yeah.
But this game, just it's a knockout game, right? We had a brilliant weekend of all three other games were really good fun. I really enjoyed them. It's coming off the back of one of the best games of the year in that France Ireland game.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the vibe that we get as not Red Roses fans, and that needs to be said. This is a rival team, and when you're in sport, you have to kind of, I don't know, it's quite nice to have a pantomime villain every now and then, isn't it? It's much less enjoyable when it's just a procession that happens in the same way. And as a sheer spectator, right, and this is taking away, I guess, my objectivity here, but as a spectator, as someone who just views this as entertainment, right, I don't find that very exciting. And so, as you say, this was the game that I enjoyed least of this World Cup by a stretch.
Can we talk a little bit about the Red Roses in the context of the tournament?
Yes.
So this was a game they went almost entirely on their physicality.
Yes.
Now, the conditions dictated a bit of that, right? So I thought Holly Aitchison was excellent.
She was.
Very, very good. But then, other than that, you're looking at the standards all being in the pack.
Yeah.
Right? It was Kelsey Clifford.
Yep.
It was Maud Muir.
Yep.
It was Rosie Galligan.
Morwenna Talling.
Who was player of the match. I would agree with that.
Amy Cockayne as well.
Amy Cockayne.
The front five.
Yeah.
Dominated this
We just
game.
listed the front five. Yeah.
Yeah, but they dominated.
Yeah. And so you saw the tries coming through them. Kelsey Clifford's finish is exceptional.
Why did she just turn into Angus Bell overnight rather than being this hard, workman, loose head prop?
Yeah.
And now she's like a wrecking ball this World Cup all of a sudden.
It's just, it comes with roses, doesn't it? You wear that shirt for long enough and suddenly you become one of the best players in the world.
True.
It's programmed though, isn't it? We're talking about in the previous video, but a lot of it is just they get the most out of the players and know how to do that. And John Mitchell's game plan and so on and so forth.
Question about Kelsey Clifford. I'm keen to get your opinion on this. Do you think that she's taken that jersey off Hannah Bottoman now? That's the first part of this question.
No.
No? Because I was going to say the follow-up for that. Remember in the last World Cup when Lydia Thompson scored a load of tries and Jess Breach barely got the ball and well, we've got to pick Lydia Thompson now, even though Jess Breach is clearly the better player.
I think Hannah Bottoman is still the first choice.
Yeah.
But the question is she best deployed off the bench?
Yeah.
You've now got a player who is playing well enough and is good enough to take that starting shirt off her, if needs be.
But they used Mackenzie Carson this week, so it makes you wonder which way they're going to go in the semi-final.
Yeah, That's the thing. And then you've got the same question happening on the other side with Muir and Byrne, right? And those two are the best, the number 1 and number 2 Titans in the world.
Yeah.
And the best one is basically whichever one's on the pitch at that moment.
Yeah.
And the second best is whichever sit on the bench. And it's a really lovely position for John Mitchell to be in. The nightmare for him is he may have to pick a team for a World Cup. Well, he'd have to pick for the knockout or bronze final, right, in 2 weeks' time. So he'll have to pick his first choice team.
Yeah.
And he's got to nail down who that is.
That's the thing, though. The other part of this is that I can't help but wonder if John Mitchell and Lou Meadows somewhat viewed this as like the fourth pool game, because then they can afford to, right? And it's smart. It's smart. Like, it's not arrogant. It's smart. Like, they know that they will probably win this game no matter what team they put out, as long as they're all playing in vaguely the right position. So you can afford to give Kelsey Clifford another chance to build some momentum. So if you have to drop her later in the tournament, you're potentially bringing on in the World Cup final, one of the players of the tournament. 100%. And, obviously you mentioned there, Holly Aitchison coming in at 10, her first start in this tournament after recovering from an ankle injury, who was absolutely outstanding. And such a drastically different 10 to Zoe Harrison and Helena Rowland, who's played there in past. That, again, this is something that Mo Hunt talked about, is that it completely changes her game, which 10 she's playing with, between whether it's Holly Aitchison or whether it's Zoe Harrison. Zoe Harrison plays more like a traditional fly half, that she stands quite deep, and she likes to kind of, bring the rest of the backs into the game and kind of not be the centrepiece of attention. Yeah. Whereas Holly Aitchison is very, very different the way she likes to play the game. Rarely will you find a 10 in the world of rugby, men's or women's, who attacks the line as much as she does.
She feels like a membrane. She feels like the entire game is running through her, right? Like, you can feel a very direct, like as though there's like a web connecting them all, rather than it being like, I'm moving the ball from here to here to here. It's more like I'm just linking up. This is one smooth chain, is how it feels like she plays. And that was a really interesting energy for England to play with, especially in conditions so wet where they couldn't move the ball much. But when they did, they was able to, she brought a real fluency to it. Yeah. In a way, I question whether Harrison might have just stepped back and kicked the ball more. Sure. Or, even Rowlands as well, like if she'd been at 10, would she have, perhaps looked to just boot the ball an awful lot? And I thought she added a fluency, and I think that's really intriguing going into that France game, which is something that France do themselves very, very well. Yeah. Is a lot of offloading, a lot of high pass, high intensity, long phase count rugby.
As a rugby player, they're quite different, but as a kind of chess piece, I liken her a lot to Richie Mo'unga for the All Blacks. As somebody who really likes a lot of touches of the ball, and as I say, challenges the line so hard, whether she's running hard at the line herself and bringing people into the game that way and engaging defenders, or she's standing dead flat to it in that kind of Prendergast way that we talk about. The thing is, when Prendergast first came through, I said called this the Holly Aitchison kind of way that he does it.
They're interchangeable, aren't they?
Interchangeable,
The other thing it reminds me of, and this is an obscure comparison, is you remember Hadley Parks played 10 for the Scarlets?
Sure.
Yeah. Of just their job is to be a third centre almost, and to just link up the other centres and link up the forwards.
Like a primary centre.
Exactly. Yeah, an inside centre. Yeah. And that kind of becomes the thing, right? It's they're less a separate position. It more feels like a cohesive part of the back line, which I think is interesting. I want to go back to the point I was making about the forwards, if that's okay.
Yes.
Because I think, as I said, Aitchison was the one exception, but that game was won by the pack. Yeah. Right? And we don't as yet know the weather conditions for the weekend. France's forwards, difficult to comprehend, because in the pool stage they look like world beaters. But then against Ireland, they could not get their scrum going at all. Yeah. And so suddenly you start to worry about them from a physical point of view in terms of set piece, in terms of stopping them all, stopping their scrum. But in terms of actual front-up tackling, France were unbelievably physical against Ireland and did a fantastic job of shutting them down, of making hits on the game line, of keeping their front foot carriers from getting forwards, right? And you look over Ireland in this pool stage, they haven't had wafer. And we'll get into this as we go, but France did a brilliant job of stopping them on the game line. Yeah. And will England, when they come up against France, be able to generate that front foot ball in the same way? Yeah. I don't think so. I think they'll get a lot off scrum and a decent amount off line out, but will they be able to just smash over the game line constantly? I think this might be the first time in a long time where they're not able to do that. If they've got a French team who's motivated and up for this. Yeah,
you're right. And that French pack have physical size on their side as well. And you also look later in the tournament, because now they're through to the final four, they might end up going to the third place playoff in 2 weeks' time. So there will definitely be a second game left for England. But you look at the Canadian pack, they are the sort of pack who like to kind of stabilise at scrum time. They don't try and completely explode and push through you and bollock you at scrum time. They are a team that like to generate some kind of ball to play off. Yeah. That was their primary focus. And for instance, with New Zealand as well, you look at like Mahukarita Fakalele, who's been playing tight head for them, who's had a bit of a shaky game against the Springboks, that Sanolusiwe Charlie kind of got on top of her, as she does most people.
Yeah, exactly.
But
let those amongst us who would not have a shaky game in front of Sanolusiwe Charlie
indeed
throw the first stone.
But I don't know. It's quite interesting because I think a lot of that hinges on who wins and loses that other semi-final as well, with how England approached that last game, the bronze final, in terms of set piece and what they want to do with that.
Yeah. It's that forward battle I'm really intrigued by, because England were able to, the entire way through the tournament so far, and through the Six Nations entirely, lean on that forward pack.
Yeah.
Whenever things weren't going well, and just lean on them to win games for them. And I don't know if they can do that from here on out. I think they're coming up against the free packs that can stop them, other than South Africa. Right, South Africa can stop the set piece, but do they have like the physical hitters that France do, that Canada do, that New Zealand do?
Yeah.
So I'm intrigued. Obviously, I think they can. Obviously, I think this England team are still the best team in the tournament. But I don't know. I think it was a workmanlike performance rather than a dominant one.
Definitely agree. And I don't know, one of the things that kind of concerned me is that, from an England perspective, this is, when they got those tickets to the raffle, they took them, right? But they didn't buy that many to say that they had both Holly Aitchison and Helena Rowland at fullback. I thought with Kildon out injured, the rationale for bringing Rowland in at the back would be to kick downfield and to play a bit more of a territorial game. And they didn't really do that.
I thought Helen Nelson was outstanding.
Yeah,
she was possibly the standout for Scotland. Kicking game, exceptional. Few times England put her into kicking battles and she was just schooling them, or at least like matching them every single time.
Yeah.
Like I don't think England won a single one. There was a few that were kind of the end of the stalemates. And a lot of that was just Nelson being incredibly disciplined and patient and backing herself and her teammates to always go on top.
Side note, I really like the fact that World Rugby/Rugby Pass have used that kicking battle at the start of the second half as like a promotional clip for how cool rugby is, but rather than just people going, kicking battles are boring.
It was woke, in fairness.
Yeah, but that was one of the most exciting parts of the game because that was a really well contested, engaging kicking battle between like two tens and a fullback who really like understand how to play kicking chess, you know?
Yeah. Okay, so Scotland now depart the tournament.
Yes.
Reflections?
I mean, I'm sad for them that the draws come out this way, right? That they could have had a realistic shot at getting to a semi-final if they were drawn against, a France or whoever. In fact, it would have just been France, wouldn't it? It would have just been France. Yeah. Or, if they got a shock win over Canada and played Ireland or whatever.
Yeah.
They
could have been any of those second tier of quarterfinalists, right?
There is a world in which Scotland got to a quarterfinal in this. And it's a shame that they got drawn a quarterfinal where they couldn't express themselves whatsoever. Yeah. Huge boost that they got that Rona Lloyd try at the end.
Absolutely.
Last try's the winner, as far as I'm concerned. But Rona Lloyd's had an outstanding World Cup and got up in a flood of tears, and it was just like, it felt like a cool crowning moment for them because, like, for this World Cup cycle, rather than necessarily for this World Cup, because they've come on such a long way, and as I say, like, they sparred with Wales for such a long time to kind of be in that position as like the third or fourth European team. And Scotland have so comprehensively taken that stride above Wales. And now it's them and Ireland that are really fighting out for that third spot.
I'm glad this kind of World Cup cycle ended on a positive note, right? Yeah. And it was a note that when we've still got a lot of work to do, but there's something special about this team. And we love it, and we're up for it, and there's a lot of positives here. So really, really I've enjoyed Scotland this tournament. They've added a lot. They've been great fun. Fran McGee as the standout, I think, over the full tournament. But Helen Nelson's been great. Evie Gallagher's been
those
world kind of free. Perhaps if you're pulling free standouts. So Emma Orr actually is right up there as well.
Yes.
You could give Emma Wassell, also exceptional.
Yeah.
Leah Bartlett, quietly actually really good.
Yeah.
However, right, it's time to ask the question again. Right, we will ask this week on week on week. We're only 3 weeks away from not asking this anymore. Right. So England won again. They're into the semi-finals. Has your percentage ranking of how likely they are to win the tournament increased or decreased?
It's definitely not decreased. I can say that much. I think it's maybe a marginal increase because this is the kind of momentum that England feed off. It's just kind of like blandly putting teams away and not giving them a sniff into a game. It's what they do best. And again, it's the thing that I'm jealous of. It makes me not enjoy games they're playing in.
I think if you look at the 4 winning quarterfinalists, right, England were the one that had to sweat the least.
Yes, exactly.
Right? So they got out of this group. They have barely got out of 16th gear or whatever.
Yeah.
They barely had to sweat. They're under no physical strain whatsoever. The Black Ferns were made to really fight for it. Right? Yeah. And there's an argument that makes them battle hardened, but there's also an argument that makes them knackered.
Yeah.
Right? Where England are able to power through and just bowl through walls, right? They didn't have Sanasiwa Charlie, as you mentioned, and Babalasha and so on, Cesar Hele, like coming into their face.
Yeah.
So I would increase their odds by maybe 1%.
Yeah, I think so. And the other factor of this, again, is that squad rotation thing.
Exactly.
Zoe Aldcroft's back in now. She's back from her injury. They've managed to get Alex Matthews some more meaningful minutes at number 8 and bringing on Maddie Fayanati off the bench. Like, as I say, Holly Aitchison coming in. Also, another part of this is Tatiana Hurd has had a really quiet World Cup so far. Then in this last game, having Aitchison to play off, played a much better game and made line breaks off that. So I can't help but wonder if that whole midfield is going to flourish more. Yeah. Obviously, that was Meg Jones' quietest game, but I think that's partially down to playing 13 in those conditions is quite difficult. But Meg Jones is also one of the most adaptable 13s in the world because her skill set is like so insanely well-rounded as a kicker, as a runner, as like a speedster. She can kind of like mould any kind of 13 that you want her to be on a given day. So, yeah, I feel like... And also, Helena Rowland coming in at fullback with Ellie Kildun out.
Compare that, who is expected to be back next week.
Yeah.
Compare that England rotation as well to how many minutes all the other quarterfinalists are playing, right?
Yeah.
So France have rotated quite a bit as well, actually, but their key players are still playing every minute.
Yeah.
Right? Like the really critical players, so Vernier, Bourdon, Sansu played every minute. Well, they've played it virtually every minute since they've come back. They've started every game. Canada just have this like policy of you get the shirt, you keep it until you lose it, right? Until someone else takes it from you. So their players are coming off early often. They're coming off around 50 minutes, but they're still playing an awful lot of rugby. And the Black Ferns have a few positions where they're chopping and changing an awful lot.
They've done a little bit, the Black Ferns. They've sprinkled it in
their players are coming up with a lot more minutes than England. So,
yeah.
I don't know.
Especially the star players.
Yeah. We're getting into territory for other games.
Yes.
However, that is England versus Scotland. Overall, if you sum this game up in one word, what would it be? The thing is, I've got one word that comes to mind, but I feel like it's almost too negative to say it.
Yeah,
Should we say on the count
I'll do
of
that
three?
in a moment, right? I would just tell you a very quick anecdote.
Okay.
With 10 minutes left to go in this game, we'd done a little bit of texting in the second half about how disenfranchised we were. I actually, during this game, went back and watched a little bit of England versus Scotland from 2020 whilst the game was on in front of me. Just because I remembered...
Six Nations?
Yeah, I just remembered about a time when Claudia MacDonald picked up a ball and did a quick tap and open play, and I have no idea why she did it. I just remembered about that and watched it and just double-checked that I did remember it correctly. And I did. Here's a clip of it.
Scrum half instincts never leave you.
So my one word is disenfranchising.
Yeah. Look, we've talked about this game too like positively in the end for me to use the word that I'm thinking of, but it begins in a B and ends in an O-ring.